The jungle tiger matriarch cornered me and marked me as the mate, chosen by her ancestors. I never believed in fate until the jungle decided I belonged to her. My name is David Chen, and I was nothing special, just a conservation biologist cataloging endangered species in the Amazon basin. 28 years old, average height, perpetually sunburned, living out of a tent with equipment that barely worked. I came to document tigers that shouldn't exist this far south, genetic anomalies the scientific community whispered about but never confirmed. I thought I was hunting data. I didn't know I was the one being hunted. The expedition started normal enough. My guide, a local man named Torres, led me deep into uncharted territory, following rumors from villages that spoke in hushed tones about the Rajani Vyagra, the night tigers, creatures that walked between worlds. Torres warned me the locals considered this region forbidden, protected by ancient contracts between their ancestors and something they called the Kshatra, the warrior caste of the forest itself. I laughed it off. I'd heard tribal legends before, beautiful stories meant to preserve ecosystems through superstition. I set up my cameras, my motion sensors, my heat detection equipment, and waited. Torres disappeared on the third night. I woke to find his bedroll empty, his machete left behind, his boots placed neatly by the dead fire, as if he'd walked away deliberately. No struggle, no blood, just absence. I called his name until my throat went raw, but the jungle swallowed my voice. The sounds around me changed that morning. Birds went silent, insects ceased their constant drone. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. I felt watched, studied, evaluated. Every shadow seemed to pulse with intention. I should have run then, should have followed the river back to civilization, but arrogance kept me rooted. I had 3 weeks of funding left, and the cameras had captured something extraordinary the night before, shapes moving between trees that defied explanation, neither fully animal nor anything I could categorize. I reviewed the footage obsessively. The creatures moved with liquid grace, their forms rippling between tiger and something else, something that walked upright, something with hands. The image quality degraded whenever they came close, as if their presence disrupted electronics. In one frame, frozen at 3:47 a.m., I caught a face, female, human, beautiful, terrible, eyes that reflected camera light like polished amber, pupils slit vertical, expression of such focused intensity that my hands trembled holding the tablet. She was looking directly at the lens, directly at me, her lips curved in something between a smile and a snarl, revealing teeth too sharp, too white, too many. I burned the tablet's battery watching that single frame, memorizing every detail. Skin marked with stripes that seemed to move, flowing from her hairline down her neck, disappearing beneath what looked like leather and bone armor. Hair the color of midnight, thick and wild, woven with what appeared to be claws and small skulls. She wore a crown of fangs, interlocked in complex patterns that suggested rank, purpose, authority. Around her neck hung a collar of jade and gold, inscribed with symbols that hurt to look at directly, shapes that seemed to rotate and reform. She was perhaps in her 30s, or timeless, I couldn't tell. Power radiated from that frozen image, the absolute certainty of an apex predator that had never known fear. I named her Rajani in my notes, Queen of the Night Tigers. It felt presumptuous, giving her a name, claiming some kind of academic familiarity with something so clearly beyond my understanding. But I needed to call her something, needed to pretend I had control over the situation, that I was still the observer and not the observed. She came for me the next evening, just as the sun bled into the canopy. I was cleaning my equipment when I felt the temperature drop, felt the air thicken with presence. The jungle sounds didn't just stop. They reversed somehow, a vacuum of silence so complete I could hear my own heartbeat drumming panic in my ears. I turned slowly, every instinct screaming danger, and found her standing at the edge of my camp, emerged from shadows that shouldn't have concealed something so large, so real, so utterly impossible. She was taller than any woman I'd ever seen, easily 6.5 feet, built with the kind of strength that comes from surviving countless battles. Her skin held that same stripe pattern I'd seen in the photograph, but alive now, moving across her flesh like living tattoos, black and gold and amber, flowing with her breathing, her emotions, her attention. She wore minimal clothing, leather straps across her chest, holding armor plates made from what looked like bone and dark metal, a skirt of layered pelts that moved like muscle. knee-high boots wrapped in thorned vines that seemed to grow directly from the leather. Her arms were bare, showing more of those living stripes, showing scars that spelled stories of violence, showing muscles that could probably break me without effort. But her face held my attention, demanded it, allowed nothing else. Those amber eyes, pupilled like a cat's, studied me with an intelligence that felt older than mountains. Her features were sharp, predatory, beautiful in the way a blade is beautiful, dangerous to touch, perfect in form. High cheekbones, full lips that revealed just the hint of fangs when she breathed, a jawline that suggested both femininity and the capacity for savagery. Her hair fell past her shoulders in thick waves, decorated with small bones and jade beads that clicked softly as she moved, each one a trophy, a memory, a claim. The crown of fangs sat perfectly on her head, and I realized with sick certainty they were real, harvested from creatures she'd personally killed. We stared at each other across my camp, predator and prey, evaluator and evaluated. She tilted her head slightly, a gesture so cat-like it sent shivers through my spine, and when she spoke, her voice rolled out in layered tones, as if multiple throats shared the same mouth, as if the jungle itself had learned human speech and chosen this form to deliver judgment. "You came searching," she said, the words accented with something ancient, shaped by a tongue not quite meant for human language. "The Kshatra permitted your approach. The ancestors whispered your scent through the trees. The old contracts speak of this moment, human male, though I doubted their prophecies until I smelled you myself. I tried to speak, to ask what she meant, to assert some kind of authority, or at least maintain dignity, but my voice came out as a broken whisper. 'Who are you?' She smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression I'd ever witnessed, mixing amusement with hunger, curiosity with absolute certainty of dominance. 'I am Vyagri, matriarch of the Kshatra, guardian of the threshold between your world and the deep forest, keeper of the old ways, daughter of the first hunt, and you, David Chen, have walked into my domain bearing the mark.' 'What mark?' I managed, finding my voice through layers of fear and something else, something I didn't want to name, something that felt like recognition, like inevitability. She moved then, crossing my camp in 3 fluid strides that barely disturbed the earth, and I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but stand frozen as she circled me slowly, evaluating, her eyes scanning my body with the attention of someone examining property, potential, destiny. She stood so close I could feel heat radiating from her skin, could smell her, wild and clean and dangerous, like thunderstorms and dark soil and blood. Her hand reached out, claws extending slightly, and she traced a line down my left shoulder, not breaking skin but leaving a trail of sensation that felt electric, permanent, claiming, "This mark," she whispered directly into my ear, her breath hot against my neck. "The birthmark on your shoulder, shaped like a claw, 4 lines descending. The prophecies named it generations ago. The tiger marked human, descended from those who once walked between worlds. Before your kind forgot the old contracts, before the split, you carry the blood of the treaty makers, David Chen, and the ancestors have decreed you will restore the bond." I looked at my shoulder, at the birthmark I'd had since childhood. 4 parallel lines my mother said looked like someone had dragged their nails down my skin while I was still in the womb. I'd never thought about it, never considered it anything but random genetic expression, but Vyagri traced it with reverence, with certainty, with the intensity of someone reading scripture in flesh. "I don't understand," I said, hating how small my voice sounded, how vulnerable I felt under her attention, under her evaluation, under the weight of words I couldn't begin to process. She moved in front of me again, close enough that I could see the way her pupils expanded and contracted, the way her stripes flowed across her cheekbones, the way her fangs pressed slightly against her lower lip. "You will," she said simply. "The Kshatra require a bridge between your world and ours. The old bloodlines weakened. The purity strains. The ancestors decreed that when one bearing the mark entered our territory, they would be claimed, bound, transformed into what we need. You will be my mate, David Chen. You will father the next generation of the Kshatra. You will become part of the deep forest. Or you will die trying to resist what has already been written in bone and blood and prophecy." I stepped backward, instinct overriding paralysis, but she moved with me, matching my retreat with effortless grace, her smile widening as if my resistance amused her. pleased her, confirmed something she'd hoped to see. "You can't just," I started, then stopped. Because what could I say? This wasn't a negotiation. This wasn't even a conversation. This was a declaration, delivered by something so far beyond human that my protests meant nothing, changed nothing, altered nothing in the trajectory she'd already decided. "I can," she said softly, dangerously. "I have. The moment you entered the forbidden territory, you became mine. The Kshatra claimed you. The ancestors marked you before you were born. Fighting this changes nothing except how much you suffered during the transformation. I prefer my mate's willing, David Chen, but the prophecy cares nothing for your preferences. You will adapt or you will break. But either way, you belong to me now." She reached out again, both hands this time, gripping my face with surprising gentleness, forcing me to meet her eyes, to see the absolute conviction there, the certainty of someone who has never been denied, who has never had to question their right to take what they want. "I have waited 3 decades for the marked one to appear," she whispered, and I heard something raw in her voice, something almost vulnerable beneath the dominance. "I have turned away dozens of potential mates, kept myself pure for the prophecy, maintained the bloodline despite pressure from the clans, despite challengers who sought to overthrow me and claim impure matings. I have earned you, human. The ancestors promised me the marked one, and I will have what was written." Then she released me, stepped back, and gestured to the jungle around us. "You have 3 days," she said, the layered voice returning to pure command. 3 days to explore my realm, to understand what you're being offered, to see the glory and terror of the Kshatra, to recognize the honor and burden of being chosen. After 3 days, the marking ceremony begins. You will be presented to the clans, evaluated by the elders, tested by the rituals. If you survive, you become mine completely. If you fail, your body feeds the forest, and we wait another generation for the prophecy to manifest again. Choose how you spend these 3 days wisely." She turned to leave, then paused, looking back over her shoulder with an expression I couldn't quite read, something mixing anticipation with warning, desire with threat. "Do not attempt to flee, David Chen. The jungle knows you now. The Kshatra have your scent. You cannot hide from what the ancestors have decreed." And truthfully, her smile turned predatory again, thrilling and horrible. "I enjoy the hunt. If you run, I will catch you, and the marking will be far less gentle. Stay, learn, accept. It will be easier for both of us." Then she was gone, dissolving into shadows that swallowed her completely, leaving me alone in my camp with my racing heart and my shaking hands and my mind trying desperately to convince itself this was hallucination, heat stroke, some kind of psychotic break brought on by isolation and fear. But my shoulder burned where she'd touched it, and the jungle sounds didn't return, and I knew with sick certainty that everything she'd said was real, was happening, was inevitable. I didn't sleep that night. I packed my equipment with numb hands, thinking I'd attempt escape at first light. But when dawn came, I found my camp surrounded by them. Dozens of tiger folk, the Kshatra, watching from the trees, from the shadows, from impossible angles. They looked similar to Vyagri, but less refined, more animal, wearing less armor, their human characteristics less pronounced. Males and females both, though the females seemed larger, more dominant, more decorated. They didn't threaten me, didn't approach, just watched with those same amber eyes, evaluating, waiting, ensuring I understood that escape was illusion, that I existed in their world now, subject to their rules, their prophecies, their ancient contracts. So I walked deeper into the forbidden territory instead. If I had 3 days, I would use them to understand what I was being dragged into, to see if there was any way out, to learn the rules of this impossible game. The Kshatra followed at a distance, silent escorts, guards, witnesses. They led me without seeming to lead, their presence directing my path, showing me what Vyagri wanted me to see. The first thing they showed me was the heart tree, a massive ancient structure that wasn't quite plant and wasn't quite something else, pulsing with bioluminescent light deep in a clearing that shouldn't exist, where the canopy opened to reveal sky and stars, even though it was midday above. The tree stood hundreds of feet tall, its trunk wider than a house, its roots spreading across the clearing like veins, each one carved with those same symbols I'd seen on Vyagri's collar, rotating, reforming, hurting to observe directly. The Kshatra gathered here, I realized, seeing dozens more emerging from the forest, seeing them approach the tree with reverence, pressing their foreheads to the bark, whispering in a language that sounded like growls shaped into meaning. An elderly female approached me, her fur more silver than gold, her face marked with scars that spoke of long survival, her eyes holding wisdom and weight. She wore simple robes, unadorned except for a necklace of what looked like crystallized sap, and when she spoke, her voice came clearer than Viagri's, less layered, more human. I am Nishara, eldest of the Rememberers, keeper of the old contracts, witness to 9 matriarch bonds. You are the marked one, the prophecy bearer, the bridge. I don't want to be a bridge, I said, surprised by my own honesty, my own desperation. She smiled gently, sadly. The marked never do, human child. The treaty makers of old fled from their responsibilities, severed the connection, tried to pretend your kind could exist separate from the deep forest. But the ancestors remember. The contracts remain. Every 3 generations, we call one back, bind them, restore what was broken. You are the 9th. 8 came before you. Some embraced the role. Some fought until they broke. All eventually became what they were meant to be. What happened to them? I asked, dreading the answer. Nishara gestured to the heart tree, to shapes I'd mistaken for carved decorations, but now recognized as something else. Forms pressed into the bark, faces frozen in expressions between ecstasy and terror, bodies merged with wood and light, and something beyond. They transcended, she said simply. After producing heirs, after serving the Kshatra's needs, after completing the cycle, they joined the ancestors, became part of the deep forest itself, their consciousness woven into the tree's roots, their wisdom available to all who seek it. It is the highest honor, human child, to become eternal, to guide future generations, to exist beyond death. Your kind fears this translation, but we see it as ascension. I stared at those imprisoned forms, at what might be my future, and felt my stomach turn. That's not honor, I whispered. That's slavery. That's being consumed. Is it? Nishara asked, her tone challenging, philosophical. You humans live such brief lives, burning bright and fast, then disappearing into nothing. We offer continuation, purpose, meaning. The marked ones speak to us still, David Chen. They guide the matriarchs. They whisper warnings through the roots. They exist as long as the forest exists. Consciousness preserved, wisdom